We have not bought a vegetable from the grocery store in the last 6 years, and that's not because we don't eat vegetables. It's because we eat all of our vegetables from our backyard garden. We would love to be 95% self-sufficient with all of the food that we grow and just leave that extra 5% there for buying exotic things like chocolate or olives. But for right now, there are definitely a few food groups that we have not mastered self-sufficiency in. And one of those things is fruit.
Right now we're kind of in that in-between phase with our fruit production. We are getting quite a few berries and some apples and pears, but it's not near enough to supply our family. We will eventually phase out of buying things like pineapples from the grocery store, because though we haven't bought vegetables from the store, like Becky said, for quite some time, it's still a little strange buying fruit knowing that what we grow is and would be much better.
So something that I've wanted to try for a really long time is canning some things that we don't grow. Like one is pineapples. I've never canned them before, but I've heard they're a lot better when they're home canned. Another thing is canning mandarin oranges. And then the last thing we're going to do is something that we have done before, but we like to keep in our pantry. It's freeze drying some mushrooms for the occasional meals when we need those. So by preserving these things, we're able to take control of our food supply. It's going to allow us to make fewer trips to the grocery store, and we're able to know what is going into those jars and control the amount of sugar and things like that. So I've never canned oranges before, so I did a lot of research as to the best way to do this, because I had in my mind the vision of what I see at the store, which is the cute little oranges that are suspended in the sugar syrup, and then they don't have any of the white part or the skin or anything. They're just all by themselves. So I found out that the way that they do that is they use an enzyme. It's called pectinase, and it just breaks down the pectin. Prior to canning, they just soak all of the orange segments in this enzyme, and it removes all of the white parts for you. When I did this research, I was like, oh, that would be so nice to use, but me being me and into all things natural and trying to do things without any additives or things like that, I was like, I don't know how I feel about using it, even though it's an enzyme and it's probably like naturally derived. I'm not sure it's good for us to use. So I'm actually not going to use that for this first batch, and we're going to try everything just as it is. Cam is like a master peeler over there. He is taking off all of the white part. The reason you want to take that off is because it can be really bitter, and I guess maybe when canning it probably gets even more bitter. So we're trying to take as much white part off as possible. We are not going to take like the whole skin around the orange off. That would just take forever. We're just doing the best we can, and then we'll do this test batch and can it and go from there. We have a lot of oranges that we're going to peel, so we are going to be here for a long time. Cam's been working on peeling the oranges, and while he was doing that, I went ahead and grabbed our water bath canners, and I grabbed a bunch of pint-sized jars, washed all the jars, put them in the canners, and filled those with water so that those jars could heat up. And I also started to make a sugar syrup. I'm doing an extra light syrup, and I'm using the ratios that are found in the Ball Complete Book of Home Canning for the syrup. So once that syrup is all heated up, then we will be ready to load these jars and get them processing. For the recipe, I am using a recipe from the National Home Center for Food Preservation. It just says to fill the jars with the oranges and then fill them with the sugar syrup and then leave a ½ inch of headspace. And then it says to process them for 10 minutes in a water bath canner. I need to add a couple minutes to that because I'm at a little bit of a higher altitude than 1,000 feet. And then once the oranges are finished canning, then we'll move on to canning the pineapple. We got the oranges mostly loaded in the jars, but because I'm doing raw pack, it is difficult to fit as many as I want. So I'm going to take some of the syrup, put it in there, and then let them sit for like a minute or two, and then I should be able to fit a few more oranges in each jar. I'll be the first to tell you that growing your own food, preserving it, and making meals from scratch can feel like a full-time job. The reality is we'd love to do everything ourselves, and that's definitely what we're working towards right now. But we also have to balance that with real life, like raising a family, homeschooling our kids, and outside commitments. Since we got into homesteading, mostly for health reasons, I'm really excited to have an option like WildGrain that aligns with our slow food philosophy and does the work for us. WildGrain is a baked from frozen subscription box for fresh pastas, artisanal pastries, and slow fermented sourdough. I love that they don't cut corners and their sourdough goes through a 20-hour slow fermentation. That's a huge deal because it makes the nutrients easier to absorb and it's way easier on the gut. They also offer customizable boxes, including gluten-free, vegan, and protein box options. And they even donate meals to food security nonprofits with every order. So it's a solid option for anyone who wants high quality without the stress of a busy kitchen.
It's good. I don't know how they do it. It tastes so fresh.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
You can use my link in the description and code seasonal30 for $30 off your first box plus free croissants for the life of your subscription. Believe me, having those in the freezer is a huge win for those busy mornings when the to-do list is a mile long. Today is day 2 of canning things we don't grow. Before we hop right into canning the pineapples, I thought I would show you what I'm doing with all of the citrus peels from the mandarin oranges we used yesterday. I am putting them in mason jars and I'm going to pack them in tight and then fill these jars with vinegar and let it sit for 2 weeks and then strain out the orange peels, and then I can use this as a natural cleaner. It smells really nice and it also makes a really good degreaser. The plan for these pineapples is to just cut them into bite-sized pieces and can them like that. I kept telling Kim as we were working on preserving the oranges and the pineapples that it felt really strange to be canning something that isn't from our garden and isn't from a local farmer. I've hesitated to do a project like this because produce shipped from a long distance like these tropical fruits, they just don't have the flavor or nutrition of a fruit that was picked right outside our door. But something that I have realized on our journey towards self-sufficiency is that it takes time and moderation is key. That is actually something that is really hard for me to accept because I'm such a goal-oriented person, but experience has also taught me that as a part of self-sufficiency, it's important to learn new skills and be prepared. Sometimes that means we need to leverage the grocery store while things are in stock so we can build a buffer in case there are times of scarcity. We really like to have that buffer because the food supply chain is so fragile. So while we're still relying on the grocery store for fruits, it makes a lot of sense for us to have a backup option in case we need it. So far we cut up 7 pineapples and we bought 10. The other 3 are not quite ripe enough yet to cut up and can. So we're gonna wait a couple days to can those and we'll just do the 7 that we cut up for right now. And we're gonna take a little break for lunch and then come back and do the canning. Canning the pineapple is a lot easier than I expected. It's a very simple process, same as the oranges. It's really, you're putting fruit in a syrup and just processing it. So we did a different syrup today for the pineapple. I made it a little bit lighter, so it's actually called like an ultra light syrup because pineapple is super sweet. So we did a triple batch of syrup and it was 15 cups of water to 2 cups of sugar. Hopefully this turns out. Again, this is something that I've never canned before, but I'm not sure why I waited so long because it seems so easy, and I'm sure it's going to taste better than what you find at the store. I was reading a book earlier this week that was talking about how lack of money is often a hang-up and a reason that people don't start a garden. I thought this was a super interesting idea since historically working with the soil wasn't a luxury, it was what you did to survive when you didn't have much money. So somewhere along the way, society started to think of it as an expensive hobby, but it doesn't have to be. So I filled up all the pint jars with pineapple. but we are completely out of available pint jars. So I just grabbed some quart jars and we're gonna put the rest of the pineapple in the quart jars. And Cam took out the electric water bath canner so that we could have one more spot to can because the other two are full. I openly admit that right now, Cam and I are not good examples of homesteading on a shoestring budget. But we spent a lot of years prior to our YouTube days when we were on a super tight budget. When we first got married, our income was below the poverty level. And even then, we prioritized starting a little garden and did it for less than $100. For us, that garden wasn't a hobby. It was an investment, and we were very careful about what we spent and how much we put into it. Every harvest was a direct deposit back into our bank account because it meant fewer trips to the grocery store. And we took those savings and then rolled them right back into the garden and the soil, growing a little bit more every single year. So I'm heading over to get a big blue bucket, and we're trying something new today with our food scraps, and I'll tell you all about it once we get set up. Okay, so what I'm doing is something that I've never actually done intentionally before, and that is thermal composting. In the past, I've done 100% lazy composting, throw everything in a pile and just let it break down. This time I am working on building up all of my materials in separate buckets. So this is obviously going to be our green bucket with our food scraps in it, and any other green stuff will go in here. And then once this is filled, we will build a compost pile with green and brown. We have plenty of brown material because we have a ton of wood chips, so really it's the green that I need to build up. So usually most of our food scraps go to the pigs or the chickens, and we don't have any pigs right now, and a lot of the stuff that's in here the chickens don't like. This is a perfect time to make this pile. So I should clarify that I know this is a blue bucket, but we are putting in green materials, meaning that these are the nitrogen-rich wet materials, and then the brown stuff is stuff that is actually brown, but it's more of like the carbon-rich dry materials like leaves or the wood chips. So we have one last thing that we're going to preserve, and that is mushrooms. This is something that I actually could grow here, but I just haven't dabbled in it yet. And we also don't eat that many mushrooms, so we're trying to funnel our energy into other things where we eat a lot of it first. So for the time being, we are just going to be buying these at the grocery store, and I'm going to preserve these by freeze drying them. And we're just going to slice them up, freeze dry them. We use them in soups and other cooked dishes, so freeze drying these mushrooms works out really well for us. We're going to start slicing up some of the mushrooms. We're going to try out using this little egg slicer, and I did a little test one and it worked pretty good. I'm just not quite sure if it's the same time or slower or faster than the knife. So we'll use both and we'll see what we like and just finish chopping up all these mushrooms. So Keenan and I just did a little test. I was using this egg slicer and he was chopping with a knife. We both had 5 mushrooms and we both finished at the exact same time. So there's no time savings with this, but it feels like less effort involved. And the other thing is you get nice uniform slices with this. With the knife, you can change the thicknesses. This is just one thickness. What is that, 1/4 inch? As we were preserving these things that we bought from the grocery store, it made me think back to those days when we didn't have much land or money. The thing that I did have was I had a little extra time and I had a desire to learn. So preserving was the perfect entry-level thing to do. And even though I had not very much coming out of my garden because it was small, we made sure in the summer to visit pick your own farms so we could get produce that way. We also visited the farmer's market. And sometimes when produce was on sale at the grocery store, we would buy that and then preserve it. Even with the pineapples and oranges, we bought those at full price. And we're going to run some numbers in a bit that prove that home canning store-bought produce can still save you money. So I say all of this to encourage you, especially if there is something holding you back from starting homesteading, whether it be money, physical ability, or lack of land. Almost everyone can do a little something to take control of their food security, even if it's something small. And some people think that because they can't do everything related to homesteading, then they can't do anything. And that is a lie. If you start small and start where you are, you will be surprised at how much you can accomplish. I mentioned this a couple of times already, but the main reason for us homesteading is not for financial savings. It's more about health things. But I thought it would be really fun to compare the cost of canning pineapples and oranges yourself versus buying them already canned at the grocery store. Cam is my numbers guy, so he is going to take over from here.
In a past life, I worked in finance, crunched a lot of numbers, and did math. So whenever there's math stuff that needs done here, Becky comes to me and I handle all that.
For the oranges, we started out with 15 pounds of oranges, and after Cam peeled them, we were down to 10 pounds.
Yeah.
But we're including the cost of the 15 pounds of the mandarin oranges.
So we canned 18 pints of oranges, and at the store, this would cost around $46. Our cost was $32 for a savings of almost 30%. We canned 26 pints of pineapples in total, and so at the store, this would cost $54. Our cost was $36, so that gives us a 32% savings on pineapple. For our expenses, I included the cost of the produce and also the cost of lids.
So obviously there's some other things that we haven't factored in, like time is one. We didn't include our time in with the costs, but there's also some benefits as well. Like we chose not to use like preservatives or the extra enzyme. And we get to pick the fruit, so we can pick the best quality fruit we can find and also wait until it's at peak ripeness. Whereas a lot of times with canned goods, it's usually like the number 2 produce. So it's not the top quality produce. That can make a big difference in the flavor of the end product. So it was really fun to can a bunch of things that I have not canned before and preserve a few things that we don't normally grow. And it was also kind of interesting to see like the financial side of it, that it is a cost savings. And if that is your goal, that can be a reason to do this. Even if you're not growing your own food or not able to, you can and preserve your own food that you buy at the store or buy at a farmer's market and be able to save a lot of money that way. For us, homesteading is number 1 about health, number 2 is we do it for food security, and number 3 is financial. So that is not our main focus, but it is cool to see that we are saving money doing it. Those look good. Prior to canning these, the big concern was whether or not having the like little peels and kind of skins on here would make them taste weird. So we're actually going to do a little taste test to see if that is unpalatable or if it's okay.
Looks like they're not even on there.
Yeah, you can't even see them.
So it said it was going to taste bitter, right? No. I think they're just fine.
Yeah,
they're sweet enough.
That's good.
You just have to chew through them more because they're skin, but...
So not worth using the enzyme, in our opinion. If you want to, you can.
I hate mine too fast. So I'm stealing some of yours. Is that okay?
Fine, yeah.